Imagine walking through a neighborhood where the streets are so narrow you can, touch the buildings on both sides with your arms stretched out. It's vibrant, it's loud, teeming with life, but there's something missing, something really basic. A toilet.
And we're not talking about some remote village miles from anywhere. This is the heart of a major city.
Exactly. We're in the informal settlements of Nairobi, Kenya, places like Kibera, Mukuru, Mathari, and this is around 2010. And because there's no infrastructure, people are forced into a corner, literally. I want to start with the term from the research that is, honestly, it's pretty visceral, the flying toilet.
It is a vivid and really tragic image. And for anyone who might not know, a flying toilet is the practice of defecating to a plastic bag, tying it up, and then flinging it.
Flinging it as far away as possible, onto roofs, into ditches, just into the alleys.
Yeah, it sounds like a dystopian nightmare.
But the numbers absolutely back it up. We're talking about 8 million slum residents who lacked basic sanitation. 90% of sewage was just untreated. It was out there in the environment.
And the cost of that is just devastating. I mean, you're looking at roughly 17,000 children under the age of 5 dying annually in Kenya from diarrhea alone. That is a massive public health crisis caused entirely by a lack of infrastructure.
So the obvious question, and I think is the one a lot of listeners are asking right now, is why not just build a sewer? I mean, we've had sewer tech since ancient Rome. Why is this so hard?
It's a great question, but it kind of falls apart when you see the reality on the ground. First, the cost is just astronomical. But more importantly, the physical layout makes it impossible. Like you said, the alleys are too narrow for heavy machinery.
You can't dig trenches.
You can't. And then there's the issue of land rights. Most residents don't technically own the land, so the government often just ignores these areas in its urban planning. It created a classic market failure.
A market failure.
Exactly. In economics, that's when the system is just inefficient. You had millions of people who desperately wanted dignity and hygiene. The demand was there. But the market, traditional sewers and government planning, it just couldn't supply it.
And that is the perfect setup for today's deep dive, because we're looking at a group of people who saw this flying toilet crisis and didn't just see a health disaster, they saw a supply chain problem.
That is the key shift in thinking.
So today we're unpacking the story of Sanergy. It started in 2010 with 3 MIT students, David Auerbach, Ani Velapani, and Lindsay Stradley. And their aha moment was basically this: what if human waste isn't a problem to be hidden, but a resource to be harvested?
Which is a radical reimagining of sanitation.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking disposal, you think recovery.
Yeah.
If you can capture the waste, you can create value from it. But first,
You have to capture
you
it.
have to capture it.
Right. So our mission today is to trace that journey. We're going to look at how they built a network of these bright blue toilets in the slums, how they figured out how to make money from, poop, and then how they recently had to completely restructure the company to scale it all up.
It's really a story about 3 things: logistics, behavior change, and biology.
Let's start with the front end. The part the user actually sees, they called it Fresh Life.
Right. And the branding really matters here. They didn't call it the Slum Toilet Project or something like that. They called it Fresh Life. The goal was to make it aspirational.
So picture this. It's a prefab concrete structure, maybe 3 by 5 feet. It's small, but it's bright blue. And inside, it's not just a hole. It's got a urine-diverting squat plate, which sounds technical, but it's crucial for reducing the smell. And it has a hand-washing station, soap, even a mirror.
That mirror is such a nice touch. It signals that this is a place of dignity. It's a grooming space. But the real innovation here wasn't the concrete shell. It was the business model. Sanergy didn't just build these and walk away. They used a franchise model.
Okay, let's unpack that, because when I think franchise, I think fast food. I think consistent burgers and fries. Why apply that to a toilet?
To solve what's known as the tragedy of the commons.
Which is the idea that if everyone owns something, nobody takes care of it.
Precisely. A free public toilet often gets destroyed or becomes too dirty to use because no one person is responsible for it. So Sanergy flipped that. They recruit local micro-entrepreneurs. They call them Fresh Life Operators, or FLOs. These operators purchase or lease the toilet. They run it as a business.
So the operator has skin in the game.
Totally. They charge a small user fee, usually about 5 Kenyan shillings. That's roughly 5 cents US per visit. Their income depends entirely on customers wanting to use that specific toilet. If it smells, if it's dirty, customers go somewhere else, and the operator loses money.
It aligns the incentives perfectly. I love that story of Agnes Kwamboka from the research. She was running an illicit business, brewing alcohol, which is dangerous and unstable, and she switched to running 2 Fresh Life toilets.
And it changed her life. The financials were really compelling. A busy toilet could serve over 70 people a day. That could generate more than $1,300 a year in gross revenue. In these communities, that is a significant stable income. You could recoup your investment in under a year. Agnes used that money to fund her own adult education.
And they didn't just stick to street corners, right? They had a few different models.
Yes, 3 distinct models. You had the commercial or public toilets. Those are the pay-per-use ones like the one Agnes ran. Then you had the residential landlord model. This was clever. Landlords would install them in their compounds as a hook for tenants.
Kind of like having a gym in your apartment building, but way more essential.
Exactly. It increased the value of their rental units.
Yeah.
And the third segment was schools. They branded it as Fresh Life for Kids, giving students free access to clean facilities,
Yeah.
many for the very first time.
But here's the logistical nightmare that I just can't stop thinking about. You have hundreds, eventually thousands, of these little blue booths scattered across the slum with no roads. It's not like you can just hook a pipe up. So where does this stuff go?
That is the Fresh Life frontline. And it is arguably the most impressive part of the whole operation. Because you can't get a sewage truck in there, they use hand carts and wheelbarrows.
Wheelbarrows. It sounds so low-tech for a company founded by MIT students.
It is low-tech, but it is high reliability, and that is the key. The service promise is 100% daily removal. The operator knows exactly when the collector is coming to swap out the sealed cartridges. That reliability builds trust. If they miss a single day, the smell comes back, customers leave, and the whole business model falls apart.
So you have this army of collectors navigating these narrow alleys, manually removing waste cartridges, and taking them to a central point. That sounds incredibly labor-intensive.
It is, but it also creates jobs right there in the community, and it ensures that the waste is actually removed from the ecosystem rather than just leaking into the groundwater.
But getting the toilet there is only half the battle. You have to get people to use it, and more importantly, to pay for it.
Correct. We're talking about behavior change. People were used to flying toilets or pit latrines that, while awful, were often free. So why pay 5 shillings for something you used to do for free?
This is where Sanergy got really creative. They went full edutainment.
They did. They understood you can't just lecture people about hygiene. You have to make it cool. So they had block parties, street theater, hip-hop songs about sanitation on the radio. They wanted Fresh Life to be a brand you wanted to be associated with.
My favorite example from the notes has to be the World Toilet Cup.
Yes. This was a partnership with an organization called Wash United. They gamified hygiene in schools. They used a football theme soccer, for our American listeners, to teach kids about germs and using the toilet.
And the stats were just wild. Hand washing rates jumped from 1 in 5 students to 2 in 3, just by making it into a game.
And you can't underestimate the power of peer influence. Sanergy hired locals as their sales agents. So when your neighbor tells you, hey, this Fresh Life toilet is cleaner, it's safer, and you don't have to walk to the river in the dark, you listen. It became a symbol of modernity, of a fresh start.
Okay, so we've got the toilets, we've got the users, we've got the guys with the wheelbarrows collecting the cartridges. Now we move to the back end. This is where the magic happens, or, as I like to call it, turning us into gold.
Or at least turning it into protein and fuel. This is the transition to the circular economy.
Right, circular economy. We hear that buzzword all the time. What does it actually mean in this context?
Well, in a linear economy, you take, make, and dispose. In a circular economy, waste becomes the input for something new. Sanergy takes all that collected waste to a central processing facility. And originally, they were thinking about fertilizer, but then they found a new star of the show.
The black soldier fly.
The black soldier fly.
It sounds like an ominous superhero.
It's actually a very helpful insect, Hermetia illucens. This fly is fascinating. It doesn't carry diseases like the common housefly. And in its larval stage, it is an eating machine.
The notes say these larvae can reduce the volume of waste by 70% in just 8 days. That is terrifyingly efficient.
It's nature's perfect recycling engine. Sanergy, specifically their processing arm, which eventually rebranded as Regen Organics, built a massive colony of these flies. They feed the organic waste to the larvae. The larvae eat the waste, they grow fat and rich in protein, and then...
And then they become the product.
Exactly. They harvest the larvae, boil them, and dry them to create something called Kuzapro. It's a protein meal for animal feed.
And this isn't just about making money, it solves a huge environmental problem in Kenya, right? The fish issue.
A huge one. Traditionally, animal feed in East Africa relies on omena, which are small sardines from Lake Victoria. But Amana are being overfished to the point of collapse. By using insect protein, you are literally saving the lake's ecosystem while providing a high-quality protein source for chickens and pigs.
So the waste feeds the flies feed the chickens feed the people. It's a completely closed loop.
And it doesn't stop there. The frass, which is the scientific term for insect poop plus the leftover compost, gets turned into Evergrow fertilizer.
Which is crucial because a lot of Kenyan soil is exhausted.
That's right. Decades of maize farming have just stripped the soil. Evergrow is organic, it rebuilds the soil structure, and farmers were seeing yield increases of up to 30%.
And they even made fuel.
Yes. Evermoto. They took the dried waste and turned it into biomass briquettes. These replace charcoal, which helps stop deforestation.
It's incredible. They essentially looked at a pile of waste and saw 3 different product lines: protein, fertilizer, and fuel. By 2021, they were processing 72,000 tons of waste a year.
But, and there's always a but when you're scaling a business like this, that volume brought its own challenges. To keep that insect factory profitable, they needed more waste than the toilets could provide.
They ran out of supply. That seems impossible in a city of millions.
Well, they ran out of the right kind of supply that was easy to collect. The toilets were great, but to feed the beast, the larvae, at an industrial scale, they needed more biomass. So they started collecting market waste, rotten tomatoes, kitchen scraps from hotels to keep the larvae fed. They called it City Fresh.
So they became a total waste management solution, not just a sanitation company. But this brings us to the big pivot, the restructuring. Because trying to run a toilet network for the poor and a high-tech insect factory sounds like 2 completely different businesses.
They are. And that was the tension. This is really the MBA lesson of this whole story. Sanergy was operating a hybrid model. On one side, you have Fresh Life. That's a service for the poor. It requires high operational touch, community engagement, and frankly, it often needs subsidies or government partnerships to work. It's a public good.
And on the other side, you have Regen Organics, the factory.
Right. And Regen is a manufacturing business. It needs high volume, industrial consistency, and it appeals to venture capitalists who want to see returns on selling protein and fertilizer.
So you had this weird situation where government utilities were confused about partnering with a company that sells fertilizer, and tech investors were confused about why their money was going into slum toilets.
Exactly. The hybrid model was causing friction. It's just hard to pitch to investors when your business identity is so split. So in November 2022, they made a really strategic decision to split. They formed the Sanergy Collaborative,
which is like the parent umbrella. But underneath it, you now have 2 distinct entities.
Yes. First, you have Fresh Life. This became the nonprofit social business side. Their job is toilets, community, and health. And because they're a nonprofit, they can work with utilities and governments much more easily. They can focus on CityWise, which is their advisory service to help other cities like Kisumu, Bukavu, replicate the toilet network.
And Regen Organics becomes the for-profit engine.
Correct. They focus on the factory, the bugs, and the B2B sales. They can raise climate tech and agri-tech capital that Fresh Life just couldn't access.
It's the conscious uncoupling of the sanitation world. Sometimes to grow, you have to separate.
It lets each side focus on what they do best. Fresh Life optimizes for health and dignity. Regen optimizes for efficiency and profit. And they still work together. Fresh Life provides the waste, Regen processes it.
So bringing it all home, what is the actual impact of all this? Because we started with the horror of the flying toilets and the child mortality rate.
The numbers are strong. By 2019, they had over 130,000 daily users. That is 130,000 people not using flying toilets every single day. They were treating 12,000 tons of waste annually.
And economically.
I mean, they created jobs in the slums collectors, manufacturing staff, the operators themselves. And for the farmers using the fertilizer, they're getting better crops. It's a ripple effect that touches health, agriculture, and energy.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is this idea of leapfrogging. We talk about it with cell phones. How much of Africa skipped landlines and went straight to mobile?
That's the perfect analogy. For a long time, the goal was every city needs a sewer. But the expert consensus now is that the world cannot wait for sewers. It's too expensive, too slow, and way too water-intensive for a climate-changed world. Sanergy proved you can build a grid-free sanitation system that actually works.
It just changes the mindset. You stop seeing these settlements as broken places that need to be fixed with Western pipes, and you start seeing them as places where real innovation can happen.
And where waste is actually an asset.
So here's a provocative thought to leave you with. If you look at a modern Western city, we take valuable nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus. We flush them away with drinking quality water, transport them for miles, and then spend millions of dollars to remove them so we don't pollute the ocean.
It's a linear system.
Yeah.
Take, make, waste.
Hmm.
It is incredibly inefficient when you really stop and look at it.
Sanergy is circular. So if a slum in Nairobi can build a system that turns its worst problem into food and fuel, why are our modern cities still just flushing it all away? Is the sewer actually the outdated technology?
That's a question every city planner should be asking themselves.
Something to think about the next time you flush. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Sanergy.
A pleasure.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Mission Possible, innovating for the world's most marginalized. This podcast is built on the outstanding work of our students, whose curiosity and commitment drive much of the research and storytelling you hear. Each episode is grounded in academic research and shaped through close collaboration with our partners. To learn more about the research and partnerships behind this podcast, feel free to contact us. Thank you for joining.